Welcome to the Better Than Rich Show with your hosts, Andrew Biggs and Mike Abramowitz. The Better Than Rich Show helps ambitious leaders who are on a mission to leave the world better than they found it, change their perspective on what's important, increase their income and impact, and systemize their life and business. If you've ever struggled with finding your purpose, have felt disconnected or distracted, or found yourself going through the motions, this show will remind you that what you do matters and will re-inspire you to chase your highest dreams. It's time for you to become better than rich.
Hello and welcome to the Better Than Rich Show. I'm your host, Andrew Biggs. I'm here with my co-host, Mike Abramowitz. Mike, how you doing today?
Feeling good, Andrew. Coming off a big night last night and excited to jam today. And we have a cool topic to talk about, so I'm excited.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, what happened last night?
So I have a friend of mine, Nick Santonastasso, who it's an interesting story. I call him a friend now, but a couple of years ago, we were strangers and, met him at an event that he was speaking at and kind of fostered the relationship over the course of the last couple of years. And then he spoke to what was supposed to be for an intimate group of just my Tony Robbins local community that I run. I was like, all right, let me throw it out to the public. Ended up having about 150 folks join last night. So, and I've been getting lots of text messages, Facebook messages, Instagram messages. I even got one email of how much value they got from the conversation last night. So it was really, really cool and rewarding to be able to, just influence the marketplace in another way.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for those who aren't familiar with Nick, there's some very obvious reasons why he's a special person. What are some of the obvious reasons and what are some of the not so obvious reasons?
So if you're watching watching the video, this is his book, Victim to Victor. And you could clearly see he has one arm and no legs. So he is a really special, unique case where something only like 12 people like in the world ever like have had the hand-heart syndrome or survived the symptoms of whatever he had when he was born. And so he's just lived. He's 25 years old and has gone through the fight of life without legs and only one arm and one finger. And now he's gone into professional bodybuilding. He's was a varsity wrestler. He went into music. He's gone into motivational speaking. He's been interviewed on Ed Milet's podcast. He was on the same stage with Tony Robbins. He went to China, spoke to tens of thousands of people in China as one of their premier speakers. And now he's getting paid. When I saw him, he was paid like $5,000 to speak. And now his speaker fee a couple years later is $50,000. So he's 10x'd his speaker fee just in the last couple of years. And it's really been inspiring to see. He's met, he was hanging out with The Rock in Vegas at a gym. And it's really cool to just kind of see what he's been able to do early in his life and capitalize on these small little opportunities that came his way, especially when most people would be victims. And he came up with the idea when Vines was popular to dress up like a zombie and scare people, and that was how he got known by the world. It's actually quite a funny story there, but yeah,
that's great.
It's cool.
And can people still go back and watch that, or where's it at now? Where's it live?
Yeah, right now it's on my Facebook Live on my personal page. So Mike Abramowitz on my Facebook page. And then I'm going to be sending an email out. So if they're on our email list, then I'll send an email out to everyone on Mike Abramowitz and also Better Than Rich, just giving them access to that interview. And just so you know, he will usually charge tens of thousands of dollars, and he did it for free as a gift for an hour. It was over an hour. I thought it was only going to be 30 minutes, but he gave us an hour of his time yesterday to speak. And it was really beautiful conversation. So I think they'll get a lot of value out of it. Beautiful.
Well, just, make sure you go check that out on Mike's personal page. If you're not friends with him, become friends with him. He's a great person to get to know. He also has a professional page you could check out on Facebook as well that I recommend you like and follow. But today, just a little bit more housekeeping. We are doing a review promotion where if you do rate us on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give us a review and send a screenshot. Obviously, we'd appreciate it if it's 5 stars. We'll leave that up to you, of course. But if you're getting value from this, go to Apple Podcasts, make sure you rate and review us, take a screenshot, post it in our private Facebook group for the Better Than Rich show, and you'll be entered into a contest to win the Better Than Rich water bottle, which is the most coveted of Better Than Rich swag at the moment. So make sure you do that, and we'll enter you into that contest.
And we appreciate Matt Bergstrom for his review. And he said insightful and actionable with a 5-star rating. Really great podcast. I love the content and the way these guys deliver to make it actionable. Highly recommend ! So thank you for the review, Matt. We appreciate it. And, we're really grateful. And that's one of the things that we try to do is we try to bring complex issues and make them simple and ideally insightful. So we appreciate that.
Awesome. And hopefully we will be able to do that today on our topic of self-confidence. And, as we were kind of going back and forth this morning, Mike, on self-confidence, I know you had a number of thoughts. I had a handful as well. When you think about the topic of how to develop more confidence in yourself, how to trust yourself more, how to actually, fill the shoes that you feel like you possibly can in the world, what comes up for you, man? Where do you want to start as we kick off today's topic?
Self-confidence is as easy as holding the agreements that you've made to yourself. That's really it. And if you make an agreement that you're going to do or say or follow through on something, and then when you do, that is going to add more self-confidence because that means you can trust yourself. If you make agreements and promises and say you're going to do something and then don't do it, then what you're doing is you're diminishing self-confidence because now you're showing that you might not follow through on other things that you say you're going to do. I think self-confidence is as simple as that. I think that we could obviously we'll be able to explore a little bit more, but that's pretty much the simple way I approach self-confidence, holding true to the agreements that you keep to yourself.
Yeah. And why do some people not hold true to the agreements they keep for themselves? What do you see there?
It could be a number of things. I think it could be distractions settle in. I think sometimes people forget why they made those agreements in the first place. So if I forget why I'm doing something, then I'll allow some sort of distraction to settle in. Sometimes temptation might settle in. It's like, I know I made the agreement to go to the gym, but I'm just so tempted to take the nap or to eat instead or, not wake up or whatever it might be. So temptation might settle in, distraction might settle in. And I think sometimes it's not even intentional. I think sometimes people think it's not a big deal. It's like, oh, it's just hitting the snooze on the alarm clock. I know I said I was going to wake up at 6:30, but I could get up at 7. And then what happens is that's one negotiation that started. So anytime we have these little negotiations of 30 minutes here, and then it's like a little negotiation there and a little negotiation here, all of a sudden we created this momentum and this drift of where we are now negotiating with our own agreements, which again puts us into this drift. The analogy I use is being in the ocean and your blanket's all the way over there, and you're in this drift in the ocean, and you're like, "Wait, who moved my blanket?" It's like, no, you didn't. You were in a drift and didn't even realize you were in the drift. And the small, tiny decisions and actions ended up adding up and moving you away from what you originally wanted.
Yeah, totally. I was watching a little quick interview with Kobe Bryant where he was talking about, hey, when I signed up to train, in the summer, whatever the training modules, right, that I signed up for, that was the training. Like there was no looking back. It was brutal. I think he trained 4 times a day, whereas other players would train twice a day. And it's just like, there's just, once I made that agreement, once I made that decision, that's what I signed up for. I'm going to follow through. And of course, talk about somebody who had a lot of self-confidence. Kobe Bryant is somebody who, one of the best players in the world because of that reason. I think it's really interesting. One other thing that comes up for me is a question mark. We were actually going back and forth on this morning where I felt a little bit this morning. I wasn't feeling at my best. And I'm glad we're here because it's actually an interesting timing, right? Because I was like, oh man, do I think I really have the energy for, to show up for our audience here today? And I was like, you know what? The audience needs me. Mike needs me. The team needs me. We have a schedule. We said we're going to do it. Let's do it, right? And I guess one question that comes up is, how do you know when to pivot if you make an agreement? And how do you know when to hold true? Any thoughts on that?
It's a good question because ultimately, ultimately the only person that you have to really look in the mirror at the end of the day is yourself. So it's like, if you think that you're giving it your best, that's all you can ever ask. And even if it disappoints other people that in the process, then they'll get over it. Just like, if I know, Andrew, you said you're feeling a little sick this morning, and obviously the team, myself, our following, we would all get over it. But if you could, at the end of the day, you look and be like, man, you know what? I could have had that conversation, then that's where some of that self-confidence might diminish a little bit, by you showing up today for me and for the team and for our audience and saying, I'll give it my best. It might not be the best, but it'll be my best right now. And my best right now is maybe 60% of what my full potential is, but it's 100% of what I have in this moment. And I think majority of people could agree with me that just by showing up, even though it's 60%, but it's 100% of what you're able to give right now, but it's 60% of your capacity, but it's 100% of what you can give right now, people are going to admire, respect, and appreciate that you're giving your best in that moment. I don't even know if I answered the question.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I think for everyone listening, to make that applicable to you, it's like there's moments where, you're kind of contemplating, you are, asking yourself, what is the best move right now? And, just, whether you're feeling a certain way or you're thinking a certain way, you can begin to question that. But, what Mike said is so true. And I think you've heard it before. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, which is like half of life is showing up. And when you just show up and you trust and you're consistent, even if you're not your best every single time, it's going to get some result and people are going to appreciate it. They build more trust. You build more trust in yourself. So there's just so much that can come from that. Ultimately, if you really can't show up and you can't look yourself in the mirror and say, it was in my best interest to show up, then maybe don't show up. But, for me, going back, I told Mike, I'm torn. Should I do it? Should I not? I had to ask myself that question. I was like, could I show up and at least produce something acceptable? The answer was yes. And so I'm here. And so I think that's a really good way of looking at it, man. I appreciate that. Cool.
We appreciate that because it's tough.
Yeah.
It is tough because oftentimes and Nick was talking about this on the episode last night, but we are wired to go to what's comfortable. So we're wired to go to what's comfortable. That's how we are designed to protect ourselves. So naturally, we're going to go to the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance, and Andrew's example is, I don't want to get off the couch. I feel sick. That's the least resistance. And that's when the second voice and the third voice comes into the head, where it's like, well, what was the agreement that you made to yourself? And are you physically able to attempt the agreement? Maybe it's not the absolute best, but it's an attempt at the agreement. And frankly, that's what's going to separate the best from the rest. That's what separates Kobe Bryant from the rest of the league. That's what separates, the Better Than Rich show and the leaders of that Better Than Rich show from maybe other people in the industry that might have just mailed it in or just settled for missing this week or something like that. So I just want to admire you, appreciate you, and also to anybody who's listening, saying you don't have to be the best. You don't have to be on 100% every single time you're on. You just have to communicate ahead of time. That's like, listen, I wasn't going to show up, but I didn't want to not show up. So I'm showing up at my best right now. And my best right now is really only about 50% of my full potential. So just bear with me a little bit. And I just want you to know that I'm here and I appreciate you. And I'm going to give it the best that I can in this moment. So it's like almost like communicating the grace that you did with me earlier today. It's like, cool, we'll stick with it, but like kind of keep that in mind. And I think that's an important approach that you took to the conversation.
Yeah, totally. When you think about, you laid it out pretty directly, right, to start, which is honoring the agreements you keep with yourself. But when you think about other facets to building self-confidence, like what else comes up for you there, if anything? I'm curious what you see there.
I mean, It's a very broad topic.
Mm.
The only things that would happen is more of like specifics underneath the umbrella, because I think almost everything under the umbrella of self-confidence comes from that holding true to the agreements that we make to ourselves. And I'm sure there's other things, but you know, the
Well, a lot of people, here's a question. Like, a lot of people struggle with imposter syndrome, right? Which is,
okay.
who am I to be talented and rich and successful? Who am I to be a leader? Who am I to step out and say something to the world and get my voice out there? Who am I to be beautiful and fit? Who am I to, have this financial freedom and travel the world? I'm not good enough for that, right? So a lot of people have that sort of like negative voice. What are some tactics for kind of quieting that voice and kind of overcoming imposter syndrome?
And again, I think it still falls under the umbrella of holding agreements that you keep to yourself. But just to that point, you become more worthy. You become more worthy of what your desires are in life when you hold the agreements. So the imposter syndrome settles in when you feel that you've cut corners on certain things. Like anytime I felt that in my past is because I was cutting corners on things. I wasn't, in the past, not following through on certain things. Like I have a journal that, and I might have even shared this on one of the episodes, but one of my first journal entries that I ever wrote, it's okay, but I was going to grab it and read it, but I've realized that most people are listening to this. But,
if you're listening to the audio and you're wondering where Mike's mic went, he was searching for his journal.
I was looking for the journal, but then I'm like, wait a minute. Most people listen to this on Apple or Spotify anyway, but it is on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, I was going to show you, but in the journal, it was back about 10 years ago that said, I'm writing in this journal because Jim Rohn told me I'm supposed to. That's what it said. That's what the journal entry said. Nice. And then the journal entry also wrote, it's like, I know what to do, but instead of doing it, I just teach it to others versus applying the lessons I'm learning. I think I'm better than other people, but results don't show it. And it was just like such an arrogant type of like journal entry, but that's what the journal entry says. And the truth is that I wasn't applying the things that I was learning. Like I would learn to teach, but not learn to apply. And that's where a lot of that imposter syndrome, like this projection of self-confidence would show up. And it was more of a facade than anything. And I didn't know that. Looking back on it, I can see it. But I look in the relationship I was in at that time, there was tension in the relationship because I was having this facade where it's like, I have a lot of money and I'm really successful and I'm this. And it's like, but really deep down, I'm like, fuck, I'm like really insecure. And, am I good enough? And I'm overweight right now. So it kind of created this spiral of unhealthy habits at that chapter of my life. I ended up being a very strict vegan. And I ended up getting down to like, an unhealthy weight for me. Like it wasn't a strong, like that's why I put in my goals right now, strong 210 is my goal, because I was like 180, 188. Like it was just like really skinny. Like my goal was to be skinny, not be like healthy. Because of my identity of just being overweight as a kid and stuff. But I'm digressing a little bit. But the point is the reason why people feel like they're being an imposter is because they're not necessarily applying and doing the hard work. They're not making the tough decisions. They're settling for comfort a little bit too much. And we have those little voices. I call that voice Wimpy. Wimpy is the one that tries to protect me. And anytime Wimpy shows up and tries to protect me, the truth, meaning the sage, comes in and reminds Wimpy that says, thank you for trying to protect me, but I don't need to be protected right now. In fact, the truth is I'm capable and I'm going to give it my best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can all relate to having that voice in our head, right? That says, who am I to go out there and do anything? And, it's in some ways, it makes sense that we're a little bit insecure, right? We know that, we're all human beings. We all have our flaws, but it's like, where are you choosing to focus? One of the things that I really drew a lot of confidence from as I was getting into, coaching and leadership, because it's a very it's a classic example of who am I to like actually give advice, for a living. We have a friend in town, and every time we come and hang out with them, he's always like, I'm amazed by your business. He's an entrepreneur too, and like really successful in the areas, but he's like, you get paid to give advice for a living. Like, what the heck? Like, what kind of business is that? And I'm like, well, people like it. Right. And apparently I'm at least halfway decent at it. And I think one of the things that I drew confidence was that people kept telling me, right? Like, people saw in me that I was valuable, maybe even before I fully believed it, right? They were like, you're awesome. You're doing great. Like, oh my gosh, you've changed my life. And I'm like, really? Did I really change your life? Or, and so it's just drawing confidence from what others see in you, even if you can't see it yourself yet, to the point where now I think that I've probably properly calibrated that. But what do others see in you? Can you draw evidence and support from others in your life telling you you're great? And also, it's a challenge sometimes for us to fully receive. I was always guilty. Like I play the piano, and especially growing up, I was always like, people would be like, wow, that was really good. And I'm over here thinking, well, in the 14th measure, I missed, the F sharp or whatever. And I'm like, well, it was okay, and not really fully receiving their gratitude and their appreciation. And so I've had to work on that to say, okay, let me fully receive. Thank you. Right. So I don't care what it is for you, but when someone gives you a compliment, when someone's recognizing something in you, see what you can do to fully receive that message. Even if it's like, hey, I really like your shirt today, instead of being like, oh, this whole thing, be like, oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. So what comes up for you, Mike, as we riff on this?
Yeah. One of my good friends now and mentors, JV Crum III, he's a great podcast, Conscious Millionaire. And he told me that you have a beautiful heart and you love to give. He said, but what's your relationship with receiving? to Andrew, to your point. And I said, no, receiving is I'm not really good at that part. I really just like to give. And he said, there's a story that you're telling yourself around receiving. And that story is also around giving, because he said, if you have trouble receiving, like whether it be receiving a gift or receiving a compliment, that means when you're giving, there's something in your unconscious that is telling you that you're better than the other person that you're giving to, because that means if they're not able to receive, or if they are receiving something that you're giving to them, then there's I'm trying to remember the way he put it, but essentially, it's not like he's as eloquent. He said it more eloquent than I'm saying, but that as I'm giving, and if they're not welcome to receiving what I'm giving, then I'm going to be hurt by it. It's like, no, I want you to have this. So in order for me to not be hurt by giving, I need to strengthen my relationship with receiving first, where it's not like this, like, I'm above you and that's why I want to give. I want to give you this sandwich because I'm able to give you that sandwich. And if they ever reject the sandwich, then I'm like, why would you not want this? And it's like judgment. There's almost like this frame of judgment that's taking place under the umbrella of giving that I wasn't even aware of. And when he brought it out and we had this conversation and discussion around it, I said, wow, like, okay, I need to go practice receiving. And at that point, I think I reached out to like a bunch of people and I said, what do you like most about me? And like I said, all right, I'm a words of affirmations guy. So that was, but I needed to practice receiving these words coming into me and receiving this acknowledgement to fully receive, fully feel. And it was a practice because I didn't even know this wasn't a thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, though. I'm glad you brought up the gift of receiving, not only just the gift of giving.
Yeah, and I think one of the other reasons to fully receive is that when we're open to receiving, now we have more energy, now we have more resources to give more, right? So it's like, if the way we like to look at this, we've been talking this week about the idea of conscious capitalism, and we are a for-profit organization, right? And also, we have a mission, and it's like as Better Than Rich grows, right? We're receiving that wealth, but also we're then repurposing and putting it into spreading the message to more people, making our products and services even stronger. And so it's like, as we receive, we have that much more to give back, right? And that can be monetarily, of course, in this example, but it could also be energetically, where it's like, if you take the time to receive a compliment or receive some feedback and receive, somebody pointing out your strengths, that can energetically fire you up such that you have more energy to give to others. So this is this is really good. I think, one other thing you might consider if you're struggling with building self-confidence right now is just think about past wins. Maybe you're not in a place right now where you feel like you're at your best. Maybe you're not in a place right now where you feel you've had a lot of wins lately, but that doesn't mean you've never had wins. And I remember going through a specific kind of tunnel period in my life. I feel like a lot of people kind of hit this achievement, orientation, and they're crushing it. And then they start to ask deeper questions, and achievement, like the allure of achievement, fades. And so I remember going through that, like asking deeper questions, but then maybe losing a little bit of my edge competitively or in an achievement orientation. I wasn't as oriented, and I just didn't, quite frankly, I just didn't care, about achievement. And I don't necessarily think that's healthy, because what we ultimately want, if you're wondering where we want to be, it's aligned achievement. What does, achieving for a purpose really look like is a question that I'll pose to you as you're, at the gym or in your car right now. But I wonder, or at that point, I really had to draw upon my past successes. And someone asked me, like, what was a peak? When were you at your best, right? In the past, how were you showing up when you were at your best? What are some characteristics about your character and your attitude and your energy, and what sort of habits did you have on a daily basis? And if you can think back to past wins, whether it was, acing your ACT, or it was, being in a high school swim team, or it was running track, or it was, a really pivotal period in your business where you had success, just like thinking about those past times, how were you showing up at those times? It's going to obviously build you confidence, where it's like, oh, wow, like, I actually am a badass. I was talking with someone the other day. I'm like, weren't you like a college soccer player? And they're like, yeah, but like that was a long time ago. I'm like, no, once you're a winner, you're always a winner. Like, tell me about the time when you played college soccer. Like how were you showing up? And we were able to draw upon that. So any other thoughts on, this idea of like drawing upon past successes and wins?
I think it also comes down to what you were doing during those wins when no one else was around. Like, what were you doing to fail forward? Because ultimately, as that soccer player example, when no one was around, they were probably sweating and going to the gym and working hard, and they were probably failing at something, like failing at the trick or failing at at some point in time. It's like, but they were failing forward. It was like learning opportunities for them. So I would consider, whatever it is that you got good at or anything you won at in some part of your life or some facet of your life, even if it's a video game, it's like, you failed passing level 1 at some point in time, and then you eventually figured out how to beat the bad guy, and then you went on to level 2. And it's funny, you ever hear Tony Robbins tell the story about playing a video game against a kid, and it's like, the kid goes and it's like, I experienced this personally, but it's like, hey, you want to play a video game with me? It's like, yeah, I'll play a video game with you. It's like, cool, okay. The little kid says, you go first. You go first, and then it's like, all right, I got this. And like, playing boom, 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 boom. And I'll last like five minutes, or, not even, maybe more like 90 seconds. And then I get killed by the bad guy. And then the little kid's like, all right, my turn. And the little kid goes like 2 hours later, boom, advances to like level 42. And you're like, how the hell? And it's like, give me that remote. All right, let me show you what's up. And then you last like, another 90 seconds. And then they go and they last another 45 minutes. It's like, are they better? Are they smarter? Are they more intelligent? No, it's just that they played the game so many damn times. They failed the way you failed so many times before, except they failed forward, meaning they learned what to do and what not to do next time. And by doing it repetition, that's how they're able to beat the game. And that's really what a lot of success is just repetition, willing to fail forward, willing to learn, willing to make mistakes, willing to mess up, and getting back up and getting it back up and trying again and again and again. I think that's where a lot of your authentic truth is going to show up. That's where a lot of that self-confidence is going to come from is through this persistence, through this determination, through this grit. And sometimes people forget how important that is.
Absolutely. So. And it's just like another definition for winning. I heard this the other day. I think it was Jordan Peterson, but another definition of winning is, people who just never quit. Right. And so if we can just never quit and just get a little better day by day, obviously you're going to build self-confidence because you're gaining skills. It's the people who, take the easy way out, who settle. And it's like, I never want to settle in my life. Any area where you're settling is an area where you've given up, right? Whether that's your relationship, your health, your business, no matter what, if you're settling in life, you're going to feel like you basically started your decline. I don't care how old you are, but you're dying, right? At this point. I never want to settle. And I never want to, hold back on that area, but it's like, okay, if I just keep getting better and keep working at it, I'm going to succeed. So, great reminder. And I also just want to double click on the whole idea of like, what do you do when nobody's watching, right? Because, that's one of the toughest pills to swallow as a leader is just the recognition that what you do when nobody's watching matters. It sucks. Like, I wish it wasn't that way, right? I wish that it was easier, for everyone here watching. But it's like, the reality is what you do when no one's watching matters. And so it's like every moment, every decision point is a decision that's either moving you closer towards the person you want to become or further away. It's getting you closer to the vision that you want to create, or it's getting you further away. And, again, like Mike said earlier, only you are going to know if you were lying to yourself in that moment or if you really were giving your best. But so often, we're like, no one's watching. You used the phrase earlier, cutting corners. And it's like every time you cut a corner, right? You're cutting corners. If you're running laps and you cut a corner. If you set out to go run 5 miles and you ran 4.5. When you were supposed to do 12 reps and you did 10. Right? And we do that in business too. It's like, I said I was going to make 100 phone calls and I made 77, right? I said I was going to reach out to, this many people and I did half of it or whatever. We do this all the time if we're not careful because that's how our minds are wired. But what the winner does is they say, I'm not cutting corners. And then that confidence grows and grows and grows and grows. And then when they're in front of a prospect who's like, why should I work with you? Like the confidence is beaming. It's through the roof, right? I've witnessed that with you, even in just the last 3 to 6 months, where it's just like when someone's on the fence, you're like, you better sign up. Here's why, right? And it's brimming with self-confidence. And it's so obvious to anyone watching that you're showing up even when no one's watching. So commending you for that. But I think the larger lesson is also important.
It's funny you say that because a small example, but it just happened at the gym. When was this? Yesterday. Yeah, Wednesday morning. Yeah. I did not want to go to the gym. And sure. I knew it was going to be a setback. We had a doctor's appointment early with James at 9 a.m. And I was like, all right, but I gotta get to the gym beforehand. So I went to the gym and I did, the routine that's in my trainer coach put into the app, and he added an extra set. Usually it's 3 sets, but he put 4 sets of full plank holds for 60 seconds or until fail or whatever I could do. Well, I finished the 3rd set and I was like, shit, he put a 4th set in there. Now, 2 things happened. Number 1, in the middle of the 3rd set, I got the rumbles in my tummy and I was like, I have got to go to the bathroom. So I was like, all right, I got to grab all my stuff. And I left.
You're getting it from all angles, right? I didn't want to be there. I got to run to the bathroom and my trainer's picking on me today. Yeah, that's funny.
I left the mats. I went to the bathroom, handled my business. And as I was walking into the bathroom, I was like, all right, I already negotiated with my mind. It's like, I'm just going to go home. In fact, I already logged out of the app. I was like, I'm already done. Like it was good enough. And it was like the universe sent me a sign. I don't know if like God or universe ever sends you a sign where you're like, shit, all right, I really need to follow through now. I've been going to this gym for a while, and the person who's monitors the gym, he said, hey, can you hear me? Got my AirPods in. And he's like, hey, anytime you use equipment, make sure you put it back. You left your mats out. And my ego didn't like that very much because I'm like, I always put my shit away. But I really had to go handle business, and I ran out of there real quick. So my ego then said, oh, I'm not done. I had to go do one more set, but I had to take a dump, and that's why I'm here in the bathroom. I got to go finish my last set. And so my ego got insulted in that moment, but it was like, it forced me to have a conversation with me and that guy to go finish that last final fourth set of that plank hold that I didn't want to do in the first place. And it's that perfect example of what are you doing when no one's watching? Because ultimately, someone is always watching. Even if it is the random dude at the gym who picked up my mats after me that said something to me, somebody is always watching, whether it's a kid, whether it's a sibling, whether it's a running mate, whether it's a cousin, whether it's a parent. There's always someone watching. So even if it's something you're doing by yourself, when you think no one's watching, someone is experiencing the decision making that you're making or not making in those moments. And it was a very unique reminder for me because I tried to cut that corner and I still couldn't cut the corner even when I tried to.
Life would not let you cut the corner. I love it, man. And talk about building a moment to build self-confidence. So very, very apropos story, man. Well, hey, anything else you want to say to our audience here before we leave for the week? By the way, we are sending out emails to remind you guys about our podcasts as they release. So make sure you check those as well. We'll, maybe periodically send you promotions and different things that we got going on with our July event as we get that organized and different things. But Mike, anything you want to say before we depart for the day?
I want to double click on what you said about growth. Growth is a choice. So we have the dignity of choice. Jim Rohn says that we have the choice to grow. So if you look at a tree outside, a tree does not choose to grow. The tree grows as tall as it can. It grows as many fruits as it can. It grows as many leaves as it can. It doesn't have a choice to grow. But humans, we are blessed or cursed with the dignity of choice. So you can choose to grow or you can choose not to. And ultimately, whatever path you choose, those small, tiny decisions are going to create incremental changes. And if you can think about the compound effect of the small decisions that you make of growth or the small decisions you make of not growth or comfort, they're going to create a different trajectory. So it's I think it's the incremental 1 degree difference that James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits and creating these identity-based habits as you're going through your day. Just choose the small little wins, hence the tiny actions daily, #TAD, win the day, win the moment, and choose growth. If you just keep that in the back of your mind, choose growth, leave today better than I found it. Let me live with purpose. I mean, that shows up all the time. And I just wanted to make sure that all of you are aware that it is a choice and you can choose your response. So be responsible, able to respond, choose growth today.
Fantastic. I couldn't have said it better. I will leave you all with that. Leave today better than you found it. Until next week on the Better Than Rich Show. Have a great week ahead. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram at betterthan_rich. And join our Facebook group at the Better Than Rich Show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, leave today better than you found it.